Caves don't hate you. They're just very, very strict about physics. In a cave, there's no straight shot to the surface, no easy way to escape bad decisions. Rock doesn't move, water doesn't care, and your body has limits you only discover when it's almost too late. In this video, we'll look at 3 real stories. A curious Boy Scout who crawled into a stone L-shaped trap. A Marine who spent 55 hours on a 6-inch ledge above a flooded cave stream, and a veteran caver who got stuck in an entrance he could climb into, but not out of. On the news, these stories are called miracles. Here, you're going to debug them. Follow the chain of failures. Find the points of no return. And see how just a few different choices could have turned them into body recoveries instead of survival stories. Killiansburg Cave, West Virginia, 1992. 10 Boy Scouts step into a small limestone cave near the Potomac River. It's not a giant system, not some legendary deep shaft, just a narrow maze of cold stone, twisting passages and low ceilings. For a group of teenagers, it's perfect. Mysterious enough to be exciting, tame enough to feel safe. Among them is 13-year-old Brian. He's wiry, observant, and exactly the kind of kid whose brain zooms in on side paths and do not enter shapes. While most of the troop sticks to the main chamber, Brian notices a side passage. It's barely wider than his shoulders, bending sharply out of sight. To most people, it looks like a crack. To him, it looks like a secret. Doesn't announce it. No, hey, I'm going to check this out. No, buddy. No rope. Just a private decision. Asterisk. I can fit. I'll be fine. Asterisk, he drops to the ground and begins to crawl in. The passage hugs him instantly. Cold, damp rock scrapes at his sides as he shuffles forward. The tunnel bends in an L shape, forcing his body into a painful twist. To get through the corner, he hyperextends his legs, contorts his hips, and pushes with everything he's got. Gravity helps. He squeezes through the bend and pops out into a slightly wider section, still tight, but not crushing. For a moment, he feels victorious. He found a secret route. He did something brave. Then he tries to go back. He presses his feet into the rock, tries to reverse his way into the L-shaped bend, and nothing happens. The same geometry that let him slide one way now locks him in the other. His hips jam, his knees are twisted. There's no space to curl, no leverage to push. He's stuck. The rock doesn't care that he's 13. All it cares about is angles, friction, and the fact that humans aren't designed to fold in reverse. Panic hits fast. He's alone in a tiny stone tunnel no one else even knows exists. His chest is compressed, air feels thin, and every attempt to move sends a spike of pain up his legs. Back in the main passage, the troop regroups. Someone counts heads. 10 became 9. They start calling his name, retracing their steps, scanning larger chambers where a kid might wander. No one thinks to look at the small, ugly crack in the wall. Who would crawl in there? Deep in the rock, Brian hears them, tries to call back, but his twisted position makes even speaking hard. His voice comes out strained, muffled, echoing weirdly through stone. Eventually, one of the scouts hears it. They follow the sound until they see something horrifying and absurd. A pair of legs sticking out of a narrow hole in the cave wall. They try pulling, gently at first, then with more force. Brian screams. His body doesn't budge. The bend in the passage and the angle of his hips have locked him in like a human wedge. His chest is squeezed. His legs are stuck in hyperextension. He feels lightheaded, nauseous, trapped between rock and his own bone structure. Word reaches the troop leader, who is also Brian's mother. She rushes into the cave and crawls down into the passage until she can reach his legs. She calls his name and he answers, scared, crying, but awake. She understands something crucial. The only way out is to reverse the exact movement that got him in. The same horrible twist, but backwards. Brian doesn't want to do it. He's in too much pain, too much fear. But there is no other option. No tool will magically carve out the stone in time. No rescue team can teleport him out of a crack made perfectly to his shape, so she does what a good leader has to do. Stays calm and talks him through the pain. She grips his ankles and gives clear instructions, inch by inch. He screams as his knees feel like they're tearing apart. His skin scrapes along unyielding rock. The sound of his cries fills the cave. The other scouts stand nearby in silence, listening to the echoes of pain from deep inside the tunnel. And then, slowly, the geometry gives way. His body shifts a few millimeters at a time. First his hips clear the bend, then his torso follows. Finally, with one last brutal pull, he slides free of the L-shaped trap. He collapses in the wider passage, shaking and sobbing. The cave that looked exciting an hour ago now feels like a stone coffin wrapped around his mind. With his mother's help, he scrambles out of the narrow tunnel. The group moves back through the cave as fast as they can. When they finally step into daylight, Brian drops onto the grass, gasping, staring at open sky like he's seeing it for the first time. He recovers physically in the next few days. But the memory of cold stone pressing into his ribs, of being locked in a shape his own body couldn't undo, never really leaves. Chain of failure here is simple and brutal, curiosity with no communication. Entering an extremely narrow passage without planning the exit. A group structure where no one tracks who goes where. It only took one small decision. I'll just check this crack out, to turn a fun cave trip into a near-fatal entrapment. July 1st, 1985. Two friends, 25-year-old Michael Hall and 24-year-old Roman Lazowski, stand at the mouth of Bronson Cave near Bloomington, Indiana. It rained heavily the night before. The ground is soaked, the air thick, the cave stream swollen, but to them, it's just added spice. Their plan is simple in theory. Follow the underground stream from Bronson Cave all the way to its exit at Donaldson Cave, a route Roman has done before. They're wearing shorts, tennis shoes, and each has a flashlight. No wetsuits, no helmets, no backup lights. No cold protection. They step into the cave. Stream they expected is now a waist-high torrent. Water surges with force, slamming into their legs. At first, it's thrilling, a real adventure, a story to tell. Then they try to turn back. The current is too strong. The water that felt playful a few minutes ago now behaves like a conveyor belt pointed in one direction, downstream. They can't fight it. The cave has become a one-way tunnel. They have no real choice but to keep moving with the flow. Then everything accelerates. Roman loses his footing and is ripped off balance. The torrent slams him into rock walls and drives him downstream. He manages to grab onto a narrow ledge just above the roaring water, clinging to an uneven 6-inch shelf of stone. He screams a warning to Michael. Michael tries to follow, but the water overwhelms him instantly. His flashlight bobs once above the surface, then disappears into the darkness. For a few terrible moments, it looks like Roman just watched his friend die. By a stroke of luck, the current does something different to Michael. Instead of trapping him deeper inside, it throws him close to the Donaldson Cave exit. He manages to grab a railing, drag himself out of the mouth of the cave and crawl into daylight, bruised, half-drowned, disoriented. He stumbles to get help, convinced Roman never made it. But Roman is still inside, alone, soaked, in freezing water and air around 54 degrees Fahrenheit, with nothing but a tiny ledge between him and the torrent. He wedges himself into the 6-inch crevice above the stream. It's just enough to hold his weight, not enough to be comfortable. He can't really sleep if he relaxes too much. He risks slipping into the water below. Time starts to stretch. The cave is cold, and every second drains more heat from his body. Roman isn't just some random hiker. He's a former Marine with survival training, and right now, that training is the only reason he stays alive. He knows he has to keep his mind running, so he talks to himself, imagines a companion, debates NBA draft picks in his head just to keep his brain engaged. anything to stay conscious, to avoid sliding into the warm, deadly fog of hypothermia. Outside, rescue teams assemble. Thanks to Michael's information, they know roughly where Roman might be, but the cave has changed. Flooding blocks safe entry from both cave mouths. One team goes in from Bronson Cave, but has to turn back after about 600 feet. Another tries from Donaldson Cave, only to be stopped by a submerged ceiling. So they do the only thing left. They start drilling from above. Hours turn into a day, then 2. Water keeps rushing through rock. Roman keeps talking into the dark. By Wednesday morning, nearly 55 hours after he entered the cave, rescuers in wetsuits finally reach a low-ceiling area inside. Donaldson Cave. A flashlight beam sweeps the darkness and lands on a human face pressed into a narrow crevice above the stream. Hey, he's here. Using a bullhorn, they shout for him to stay calm, to hold on just a little longer. At 5 p.m., rescuer Steve Collins reaches his ledge and throws a rope across the stream. Roman ties himself in. They try to haul him across, and the anchor fails. In an instant, both men are ripped off the ledge and thrown into the flood. Downstream, another rescue team waits, knowing this might happen. They grab them, stabilize them, and reset the plan. Roman is quickly fitted with a helmet and a wetsuit top. Rescuers secure him to a rope system running above the water and slowly guide him out of the cave. Inch by inch, riding the controlled tension instead of raw current. At 8 p.m., he finally emerges from the cave mouth, shivering, exhausted, but alive. Doctors treat him for hypothermia, dehydration, and sheer physical fatigue. He has survived 55 hours alone in a flooded cave, on a ledge not much wider than a grown man's hand. His survival wasn't just luck. The chain of failure here is clear, entering a cave stream right after heavy rain. Minimal clothing and no thermal protection. No clear abort rule. If the water is this high, we don't go. But his chain of survival is also clear. A friend who manages to reach the exit and call for help. Professional rescuers who adapt to the flood instead of pretending it isn't there. And a man who keeps his mind engaged for more than 2 days in the dark, because he knows that once his brain checks out, his body follows. Tennessee, February 11th, 1998. 4 experienced cavers, James Lewis, Alan England, Darrell Moore, and Jerry Olson, stand in a cold patch of woods, staring at a new entrance. Locals call the place Weatherly Well. No one has properly mapped the inside. The entrance is intimidating. A vertical slot about 9 inches wide leads straight down into the earth. Below that, a 7-foot drop, and then another 10-foot descent into deeper darkness. The crack is just barely big enough for a single person to squeeze through. The rock is wet and unforgiving. Passage beyond twists away, just tight enough to make even veterans uneasy. Alan England is 63, the oldest in the group, but he's also the smallest and one of the most agile. He's in great shape, with decades of caving experience behind him. He volunteers to go first. With a rope set as a handline, he leans into the slot. He inhales to shrink his chest, twists his shoulders, and begins to slide down through the narrow opening. Cold stone scrapes his clothing, soaking the fabric and stealing heat from his body. By the time he squeezes through, he's breathing hard, more from tension than from effort. He drops into a slightly wider chamber below and sweeps his headlamp around. Beneath him is that 10-foot vertical drop into deeper black. The cave coils away, hiding its full length. There's a strong pull to keep going, to see what no one has seen. But Alan has been doing this long enough to recognize a bad pattern. No extra rope, no one below to assist. Unmapped passage. He makes the right call. He decides not to continue solo. Climbing back up the 10-foot drop is straightforward. Years of practice make the movement almost automatic. Then he reaches the narrow entrance slot he came through on the way down. Suddenly everything gets complicated. Gravity had done him a favor on the descent. Now, in reverse, it works against him. He reaches up and tries to pull himself into the opening. His shoulders catch on stone. There's no room to adjust, no space to bring an elbow around or change angle. The wet fabric of his shirt sticks to his skin. His muscles are colder, slower. Every attempt to push or twist only drives his body tighter into the rock. Above him, the others notice that something is wrong. They try to help, pulling on the rope to give him extra upward force. But the slot is too tight for that help to matter. All the pulling in the world can't shrink shoulders inside limestone. Alan is stuck. Time drips by in the darkness. The cold gets worse. His clothes, soaked by the rock, offer no insulation. The narrow space presses against his chest, making each breath shallow and strained. He shivers. His strength drains. Every attempt to fight free burns the last reserves he has. His teammates lower warm clothing and a thermos of hot drink, trying to slow the slide toward hypothermia. He takes what he can, but even as warm liquid hits his stomach, the reality becomes impossible to ignore. He isn't winning this one alone. So eventually he says the words no experienced caver wants to say. He can't do it. They need to get help. Lewis and Olson hike out quickly and call the East Tennessee Cave Rescue Team. Within 2 hours, specialized rescuers arrive at the entrance with gear built exactly for this kind of nightmare. By the time they reach Alan, he's been trapped for nearly 5 hours. His face is pale. His limbs tremble from cold and exhaustion. They assess the situation and set up a complex pulley system above the slot. There's almost no margin for error. Too much force, and they could injure him badly. Too little, and he doesn't move. Slowly, inch by inch, they start pulling him upward through the crack. Stone scrapes his ribs and shoulders as his body grinds past the narrowest point. He clenches his teeth, riding wave after wave of pain. Finally, after about an hour of careful work, he slides through the entrance slot and out into the open. He's exhausted, drenched, and shaking. His legs barely support him. But in classic stubborn caver fashion, he insists on walking back to the car under his own power. Later, he openly admits what happened. He underestimated the cave, and especially the entrance. This chain of failure is subtle. Entering an unmapped cave with a severely constricted entrance. It's not fully testing whether the entrance can be climbed. Asterisk backwards, asterisk under fatigue and cold. Relying on experience to compensate for geometry. The cave didn't do anything unusual, just exposed a simple fact. Going down is not the same as getting out. From a distance, these 3 survival stories look like pure luck. A boy happens to have a mother who can crawl into a crack and calmly coach him through hellish pain. A man happens to land on a tiny ledge and have a friend who reaches the exit alive. Veteran caver happens to have teammates who call the right rescue team before his body gives up. But when you zoom in, luck starts to look more like a thin layer of randomness on top of very specific chains of failure and survival. In all 3 stories, the caves didn't suddenly turn hostile. They simply enforced the rules they always enforce. If you go into a space tighter than your ability to reverse, you can become part of the cave. If you enter a flooded system after heavy rain, the water decides where you're going, not you. If your exit is a bottleneck, you barely fit through fresh and dry, you might not fit through cold and exhausted. The difference between a miracle survival story and a fatality often comes down to a handful of decisions made before things go wrong. Tell someone where you're going. Plan the way out, not just the way in. Respect water levels more than your ego. Assume that fatigue, cold, and panic will make you less capable than you are in your living room. Luck is great. But if your entire survival plan is, I hope the cave is feeling generous today, you're not exploring. You're just gambling with better scenery. Which of these 3 chains of failure do you think was the most fixable? Where do you see the real point of no return in each story? Drop your breakdown in the comments, and if you want more content where we debug disasters instead of just watching them, hit subscribe and check out the next episode.